Hey BookTube, it's time to wrap up August. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks, and I thought I would tell you all about the sci-fi and fantasy, and I think there's one contemporary in there, that I read in August. So let me start out with the Pillars of Reality series by Jack Campbell. I love this series. It's all narrated by MacLeod, who is phenomenal. He's, I know I go on and on about him all the time, but he really is so incredibly talented that he just, wow. This is a YA series of 6 books, and the first book is The Dragons of Dorcastle. The second book is The Hidden Masters of Marandor. The third book is The Assassins of Altice. That's, I think, maybe my favorite. The fourth book is The Pirates of Pacta Servanda. Now, I really liked that one too. Book 5 is The Servants of the Storm, and then book 6 is The Wrath of the Great Guilds. The Wrath of the Great Guilds was what came out in August, and so I ended up doing a reread of the entire series. So I had read them before, and then I got to enjoy them again and be in that world. I will do a review of the whole series, so I won't go into each book, but suffice it to say that it was a 5-star series for me, and I absolutely loved it. Speaking of rereads, I reread An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is book 1 of a series by the same name, and on audio it is narrated from 2 points of view by Steve West and Fiona Hardingham. This was a 5-star book for me last year when it came out. It is amazing. And it's set in an incredibly brutal world where there is no justice. Nothing is fair, and when that is the case, evil can flourish. It had great world building, incredible world building. I loved the characters. It was brutal, it was moving, it was surprising, and I gave it 5 stars again. And then I followed that up with the sequel, which is A Torch Against the Night, and I received this as an audio arc from Penguin Random House Audio. I love these people because they send me the greatest books. And this was such a pleasure to get to listen to. The same 2 narrators, Steve West and Fiona Hardingham, narrated this book, but they were joined by a 3rd point of view, and that was narrated by Katharine McEwan. There was a continuation of the world building, and of course we got another character's perspective, which was nice because she was a main character in the first book, but we only knew her through the eyes of one of the other characters. So in this book, she got her own point of view, which was nice. There was a huge amount of character development that happened in this book. It went a direction with some magical elements that I just didn't expect, but they incorporated well into the story, and it had a very good ending, and the kind of ending that won't leave you desperate for the next book. Certainly looking forward to the next book, but not on a cliffhanger. So really, really great sequel. It did not suffer from middle book syndrome at all. It was completely its own story, and it was really, really good. So I ended up giving that one 5 stars as well. There was one book I read in print, and that was The Raft by S.A. Bodeen. This isn't available on audio. This is the story of a girl who is on her way from Honolulu to Midway Island, where her family lives. She's been visiting with her aunt, and so she gets on a cargo plane, which she often does. She makes this trip all the time to see her aunt in Honolulu, where her aunt goes on a business trip, and she ends up going back home. Well, her plane crashes, and so she washes up on an island, and it's just the story of how she survives. I had some problems with this book, mainly stemming from the immaturity of the main character. But I have to say I was able to forgive a lot of that because she's just 15 years old. A lot of the survival skills that she had I thought were a little bit inappropriate for her age. But you know, it's a fictional story. It's not supposed to be really realistic, and she has some dumb luck along the course of the story, and so that helps her out. But there's a plot twist that's an interesting one. I think some people probably see it coming. I don't know that I saw it coming. I wasn't really surprised to find out what happened. But this is just one of those books that's written fairly well, and it targets a specific audience. And so I think it would be really good for that audience. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I thought it was pretty good. Nothing outstanding, didn't wow me or anything, but it's a good book. And lastly, there were a couple of short stories that I read by Carrie Vaughn. These are available to read online, so of course the links are all below. The first was called The Bravest of Us Touched the Sky. This is all about some World War II pilots who are women, and they have to ferry a plane from one place to another, and there's a doctor who goes along with them, and they're not sure why. And so you find out over the course of the story. It's not a very long story at all. It doesn't take very long to read, but it's got a nice little plot twist in there. And Carrie Vaughn is just expert at subtlety. She can give you a nice little plot twist, but it's so subtle in the way that she presents it. And then you get to the end of the book and you think, whoa, that was kind of cool. So that was a real pleasure to read, and that is from a collection of short stories called Straying from the Path. And there is no audio, obviously, but I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I moved on to The Best We Can. This is all about first contact with an alien race, and it was so interesting and eye-opening and a little bit unnerving, because essentially what she does is approach it from a very common daily kind of standpoint, where it's a big deal when it first happens, and then we all go back to our lives. And so it's not a big deal in the media anymore, and nobody's reporting on it, and it's not anything. I mean, it's just kind of, we all move on. So it was a little unnerving and a little bit scary at what our society might do after a first contact experience. I could read Carrie Vaughn all day long. I really could. This story and the one before it really did end well, and yet it left me wanting more. And not necessarily more of the story, but more Carrie Vaughn. So there are a couple of podcasts that I've found, and as I listen to them, I will talk about them in a wrap-up. But boy, if you can get your hands on any of these short stories she has written, I think they're worth reading. And they don't take very long, which is really nice. And, like I say, I always go away wanting more. So I gave both of those 4 stars. And that's all of that I read in August. If you've read any of these, of course, I want to know your thoughts, so let me know. And that's it for now from me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.